Hey guys, so I'm going to show you how to use the 3D printer starting straight from where you export. So you can either find something on Thingiverse or GrabCAD or whatnot, or you can make it yourself. So let's just go to a camera mount, alright? And so let's say I want to export this camera mount. How do I do that? Well, I can export in two ways. I can export a specific part, so say I created multiple parts. This is just one thing, so it doesn't matter. So, or you can export the whole thing by right-clicking at the very bottom on the tab that you're going to be exporting. And same goes for the part, right-click on it, go to export. So let's just export the specific part since it doesn't matter anyways on this one. And so let's name this camera mount, and we're going to export that. Alright, and so now it's going to show up my downloads. I'm also going to show you how to do it something from here, so let's find anything that looks interesting. We can have something like this, since we also will have these. I'm not actually going to print this, just to show you how to do it. Something just like this, download these, alright? And so they both come out as an STL file. So next you're going to want to open up your slicer software, and so in our case we're going to be using Cura. Alright, so once Cura opens, right, you're going to want to set some settings, alright? So, actually no, before you do all the print settings, alright, you're first going to want to click this file icon. It will open up Open File. You're going to want to go to your downloads, which, once it loads, yep. So right here, you have your camera mount that you just exported from Onshape or Thingiverse or wherever you just got your thing. And click on it, and click Open, and there you go. It's right there, right? And so, let's say I don't want this 90-degree overhang right here. Let's say I want to use less supports, or I just want to print without supports in the first place. I can orient it by using different tools on the sidebar. Alright, so the middle tool right here with this like rotation thing is rotate. So I can rotate it in all three directions. I rotated it on the green one, which should be Y, I'm pretty sure. So it's flat against the face, and I don't need to use supports. This is scale. We're not going to mess with that. This is move. So say I want to start in the top left corner, or in this case, we'll just put it in the middle. Right. Over here is mirror. Over here is per model settings. So let's say I have multiple things on here, and I want to change it up a little. And then support blocker is also pretty unique. You can select areas that you don't want to have supports, but we're just going to keep it simple with minimal supports. I don't think this even needs it, to be honest. So on the settings right here, so your printer, your like Cura Settings should already have like this stuff auto-filled. I don't really mess with these too much unless I find instructions on Thingiverse, for example, that specifically say from the designer to use certain shell infill or line quality. So for infill, you're going to want to pick gyroid for the best geometry, and this thing honestly can go anywhere in the 20s. It doesn't need to be very dense, but let's say we have a high stress thing. Let's say we have a 3D printed wheel that's going to go under a lot of stress. We're going to want to crank that up. So the more infill, the harder it is. But it also uses more material. Alright, so under the material section, this is where you got to know what you're printing with. So our printer in the lab right now is currently using PETG, and so this is my PLA settings, because that's what I use at home. And so for y'all, you would want to look on the spool, and generally in the spool they will also say the temperature. And so I know PETG is 230 approximately. And so build plate temperature, If you see warping, you might want to toy around with this. I think 70 would honestly, or 60 actually. 60 is fine. Yeah, or we'll keep that 70. Is fine. And then print speed. So if it prints faster, then you have a worse quality. If you print slower, you have better quality, but it takes a lot of time. And 3D printing is very slow already, so you don't need to take unnecessary speed losses. For travel, enable retraction. This just stops it from making strings on accident while it's traveling from like this point after filling out a rectangle here to filling out like a rectangle here as it goes up. Cooling. So for cooling, you generally don't want the fan on for the first few layers so it doesn't warp and it sticks proper. After that, you want to turn it on also. I just have it at 100% already in here, but you can manually adjust it on the LCD screen. And so for support, if I want support, let's say I think this part will collapse on itself, or it won't print very well, I can enable supports, and there's setting if I want it everywhere or just touching build plate. So if it was just touching build plate, it would not get all these holes. Now let's say this was flipped. This was rotated, so it was like this. This arch would be touching the build plate if the support went straight up. So there would be a support here. However, these holes would not have supports. Now with everywhere, all the holes would get filled too. And so with supports, it can get annoying if you have too much supports because you have to strip away all of that. Also, I need to fix it. Alright, there we go. So these are all different types of patterns. This generally will be the strongest, but you do not need a super strong support. It just needs to hold up some plastic. So I just go with cross as personal preference. For build plate adhesion, now sometimes you'll see prints where they have like a fat layer on the bottom. That is brim. Now if you see a thick layer and that's like surrounding it, that's raft. And it basically just puts it on a little platform. Brim just gives it a brim, basically, yeah. Skirt does a line that tells you approximately how big it will be. So it's going to be generally a little larger than what it actually is. So we can go to preview here, and I'll slice it and show you what skirt looks like. The other two are kind of self-explanatory. Dual extrusion I would not worry about since we are using Ender 3s in the lab, and that won't be necessary. Oh. I'm plugging in. What the heck? Okay. Sorry, guys. Oh, my computer might shut down. My charger's broken. Okay. Sorry about that. Alright, so you see now, that's your skirt right there. So let's say I was looking at it, I'm like, oh yeah, the base is a rectangle shape. That's approximately how big it's going to be. Alright, and so right now it says save to file. And so this is the part where you're going to grab your white USB stick. My charger's broken. Crap. You're going to grab your white USB stick with the SD card in it, insert it into any USB port on your computer. So now I just insert it. And now see it pops a switch to save to removable drive. And so I'm going to click save. And it's going to save onto that. and then it saves you eject, and then now we're gonna take out the USB and go to real life stuff. Alright guys, so now we have our SD card that we just ejected, and so I'm gonna set my phone down in between my legs. Alright, I removed the SD card, and we're gonna put it in. Make sure you get your orientation correct, so you don't want to break it. Drop my phone. Alright, so once I insert it, I can turn on the power switch on the side, right there. The screen will turn on, and so push down. Yep. And so I'm gonna go to print from SD. The in-lab printers might be different. It might say print from TF or something, but it's the same thing. And so I'm actually not gonna print the other thing, the camera mount. I'm gonna print a Versa 2 dock because that's kind of useful to me. And once I click down on it, I can click down again and go to control, go to temperature, set my nozzle to 200 because I'm actually using PLA. These settings I demonstrated on the video earlier are for in-lab printers. And I was talking about how the filament will typically say what temperature you should use it at. And so right here it says 190 to 220, so I'm using 200, which is right within the parameters of what it wants. So I'm just gonna let it run after, and so you can go return to main. The very top row is always like backspace basically, and see it's bed heating. It will keep heating until 33 is now 60 and 82 is now 200, and that's all you have to do. Make sure if you're using a glass bed or not, make sure it's clipped down. There are some magnetic beds which we are also using in the lab, but just in case, you know. And that's it.